Hey guys, how's it going? Coach Tyson from Oxtrend, and today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, and that is, should you be squatting in heel shoe or should you be squatting in a flat shoe? And this became a discussion lately with me, my clients, and some of the followers, because I recently switched from heels to a flat shoe after successfully squatting in heels for the past 5 years or so, and then I never changed it. But then why all of a sudden that I directly switched into flats? And in this video I basically just want to talk about whether you should squat in flats or you should switch to heels, or if you're wearing heels then you should come back to flats. And there isn't really like a clear cut answer, but we will talk about some of the considerations as to whether you should squat in flats or heels, and maybe this video will help you find your answer better. Before we talk about the details about these three different shoes in particular, I just want to talk about a little bit of my experience, why I was squatting in a heel shoe and then why I recently switched to a flat shoe. So basically, when I started going to the gym, I was wearing trainers to the gym like any other lifter would do, or like a new gym goer would go. And I was decent in squats. Like, squats weren't my favorite lift, but then I didn't really care about what footwear I was using until I discovered powerlifting videos on the internet. And at the time when I started powerlifting, like, the information out there wasn't readily available, and there was very few things that you could look up to and then determine whether you want to wear a flat shoe or a heel shoe. So my basic concept was, they call this the squat shoe, so it must be good for squatting. So that was the only thing that I considered, and these shoes were also quite expensive. So I thought, like, most of the time more expensive products are always better. And then I ordered not this exact pair, but the older version of the exact same shoe, the Nike Romelio 3s, I think. Yeah, they were pretty good looking. And then once I switched from my regular trainers to my squat shoes, my squats became instantly better. But at the time I thought it's because of the shoe, but I also didn't consider that, like, those shoes were like really soft. There was no lateral support. The shoe wasn't like really well fitted for myself, and I was able to hit more depth than usual. So I thought, like, these shoes are really good shoes, and so they're obviously made to be squatting, and everybody should be squatting in a squat shoe. That was basically my conception back in the day. And then I stuck to these shoes for a long time, like 2-3 years down the line. Then I started to see more and more research about flats versus heels, more and more anecdotal experience from powerlifters on the internet, and then YouTube was also getting bigger, and then, like, more and more lifters were using flats compared to the heels. And then some of the other coaches that we see online, they were also recommending flat shoes. But then for me, what stuck to me was, if it is not broken, why fix it? So that was my main concern, and I was really durable. I felt like my quads were my stronger body part, as to my back being a slightly weaker body part. So with the heel shoe, then I can also use more of my quads, and that's my stronger style of squatting basically. So that was my concept, and then I stuck to it, and then I continuously made progress over the years. But then what changed my mind eventually was, one of the bigger concern with my squat was, like, I was hitting too much depth. So I thought, like, flat shoes would be able to cut that out a little bit. So that's when I started to understand more about flat shoes. So that was one of the concerns, right? The second thing for me that I would want to switch to heels was that I felt like maybe I can have more control in the squat, because so many people are saying it. Maybe it is a valid point. I might have more control with a flatter shoe for my squatting. And then I was also basically just getting bored of the shoe. But then I was in a bit of a confusion whether I should directly go from a really high heel to something like the Adipowers, which has a little bit of a less heel, and then finally make my move down to the flat shoes, or like, what should I do? So then I directly just moved to the flat shoe, and then the transition was just so effortless for me. And then I am now squatting in flats, and then they don't feel any weaker than how it was in my heel shoes. And I basically switched to flat shoe for just a few thoughts, and then it instantly felt better to me, and I felt like my work capacity could be higher, or like I can push more workload with the flat shoe. So I'm sticking to the flats. But for you guys who don't know what to do, what are the differences in these shoes? So first thing first, this is like a regular squat shoe that has the highest heel. So this is, I think, a 0.75 inch heel, and then this is around a 0.4, 0.5 inch heel, and then this is obviously no heel, zero drop. So what happens when we're wearing a heel shoe, from my anecdotal experience, is that obviously like the hottest topic is ankle mobility, but I don't think it makes so much of a difference that our squat movement pattern completely changes. If you look at the body anatomy, like if you look at the knee and the hip movement, then if you look at heels versus flats, then you don't see so much of a difference that it completely changes demands. Now suddenly the quad movement becomes a back movement. It's not that drastic. Obviously there are some joint angle changes, but that's not the reason why we're looking to go for a heel shoe just to use more quads, because raw barbell back squat at the bottom position, obviously your quads are going to get stretched no matter what sort of a shoe you use, and then we don't want to go any deeper. So ankle mobility I don't think is like the biggest concern, because if you are not hitting depth with a flat shoe, then that means like something is inherently wrong with the squat, and maybe we want to fix other things rather than jumping into a flat shoe. But then the biggest thing for me to notice is that I think it corrects the squat by over correcting itself. So normally when we're squatting on flats, we tend to shift back in our heels a lot more, and that is a common problem when squatting. Like untrained, when an untrained person trains with a flat shoe, or they're just trying to sit down into a squat, they tend to fall back a little bit. But then what happens with the heel shoe is that since the center of mass is more on the forward, then that naturally puts you in a position that you tip forward and fall down even more. So when we're wearing a heel shoe, then we overcorrect that movement by finding our center of mass, because we're trying to fall forward, but we're trying to balance it off by finding the center of mass, because you cannot fall backwards. Like you can fall backwards, but it's highly unlikely that you're going to fall backwards in that. So it's like a constraint that the shoe puts for us, so that we tend to get into a slightly better position while wearing a shoe like this. But then what also is another big thing is that most of the trainers are not very well built shoes. So you may feel like your feet are moving inside a lot, and then there is a lot of cushion that's like pushing you forward and backward. So when you transition into like a squat dedicated shoe, then that isn't the issue, because this is like a pretty hard solid rubber, or even wood sometimes, and then inside too, like there isn't too much of a lateral movement. So like the shoe helps get into a more correct squat position by default, we can call it that. So that's that. But then with a shoe something like this, then this gets you something a bit more closer to a more flat surface, so that when we switch into shoes like this, then we're not overcorrecting ourselves by tipping backwards, because with this shoe you're more likely to fall in comparison to a shoe like this. So these are, I think, the movement and finding the center of mass is, I think, the biggest thing when it comes for me, that the squat shoe may inherently be better. But then when we switch into a flat shoe, then I think the biggest thing for me when we switched from this shoe to this shoe was like I could feel the ground a lot more. So I am now more aware of my foot placement, whether I need more pressure in the front of my feet, or I'm tipping forward to my heels, because like I said, in the shoe you're not really able to feel much of it, rather than just finding the center of balance. But with a flatter shoe, I'm in contact with the floor more. I feel like my let's say my right side is moving laterally, or my left side is moving laterally, or like I'm producing more force from one leg or the other, or like I'm finding center of balance through myself, rather than the shoe forcing me to, first by pushing me forward in the shoe and then trying to overcorrect. So these are the little things that is a bit slightly more beneficial for me when it comes to wearing a flat shoe. And what I also feel like when I'm wearing a flat shoe, then I don't naturally hinge into my position to find the descent speed of a squat. So when I am squatting with heels, I'm naturally gonna get into a better position by default. That's just my bias feeling. But with the heel shoe, then I hinge back more, and then I try to load my hips and my hamstring as I go down into the descent, and then which will likely cause for a better bottom position for me. So that is another advantage that I felt with a flat shoe. And another one is like I'm reducing the range of motion, because with a heel shoe I'm able to go much deeper, and then whenever we're squatting, we don't want to stop the movement by ourselves, but it should be like a byproduct of all our body parts in a very tight braced position at the bottom, and then you go back into the ascent. So for me, those little things helped me choose flat shoes over the others. And these are things that when I switched from a hill to the flat, those things didn't affect me. I didn't have a problem finding my proper balance, so that's the big one. And then I was able to feel the ground more, and then control my descent a little bit more, and then shorten range of motion too, which could probably get me a bit stronger. But then when should you use a heel shoe? Because I'm only talking about why I basically switched into a flats. I wouldn't say you should switch to a heel shoe just because it is meant for squatting. But then for some of the lifters that I work with, or we are not able to find a proper bottom position with flat shoe, because if we overhinge with this, then we sort of go into a more butt wink sort of a position. So that could be a little bit of an issue, and then you're forcing yourself to hit depth, and it may feel like depth is really far away for you when you're wearing a flat shoe, because you basically have to hinge a lot more, and then when you squat down, you're going into a butt wink sort of a position. Or sometimes maybe if you have a foot or an ankle related injury, and all of your feet need more support in general, because most of the flat shoes are pretty wide and pretty open. So when you go into constricted shoe, then maybe it could help free up some of the pain in your feet, and maybe even ankle issues you might have due to a hit or an injury or something of that sort. Then maybe a heeled shoe would be better in that case. And I don't think I'm getting more benefits out of a heel shoe when I look at it from a global perspective. And I think flat shoes are the way to go, as long as we are able to hit depth, be injury free, and basically have a better powerlifting squat. Now for obviously weightlifters, it's a completely different story. The ankle dorsiflexion demands are much higher, so obviously these shoes are going to be superior. But for powerlifting cases, I think for most cases flat shoes would be the option to go. But obviously if you have the option to try out both, that is what I would say. And basically give one shoe at least like a few blocks to run with, and then you should instantly feel which one is better for you. But considering that your squat technique is good, you're finding good center of mass, your center of mass management is good, your load management is good, then maybe you can decide for yourself. But if you're just trying to sit down and then stand back up, whichever feels comfortable, that's obviously going to be the heel shoe, because it just forces you into a better position to squat. So try out both, and yeah, I think those are the things that were in my head. And it's not like a clear-cut answer. This shoe is better than this is better. No, the Adi Powers are the best shoe. No, the higher heels or flat is the only way, or no way. So yeah, try everything out and then choose for yourself which one is better. Consult with your coach too. And if you have any other questions, you can ask me directly, or you can leave some in the comments down below. And yeah, like always, if you like the video, make sure you share this with your friends who are in that confusion. And if you want customized training templates, it's available in our website, one-on-one coaching, everything related to fitness on octanesystems.com. And until next time, be strong.